In today's biased news, violent unrest continues in Kenya, Tunisia expels black refugees, and Spain's resurgent right wing returns to prominence. Chaos in Kenya as the central government closes schools after 3 days of widespread demonstrations against cost of living and tax hikes. 2 other large-scale protests earlier this month were met with tear gas and live rounds, which resulted in 15 deaths and hundreds of arrests. Among the injured were 3 schoolchildren, who were affected by the use of tear gas by police. The current government ran on a platform of reducing general prices, but has approved new taxes hitting the lowest earners in the country, as the prices of staple goods continue to inflate. Unsurprisingly, these fuel, housing, and other taxes are meant to generate income intended to repay national debt, in another example of structural readjustment enriching the first world at the expense of the third. This follows other measures such as the lifting of fuel subsidies, which in turn raise the prices of transport for core goods in Kenyan markets. Community organizations are calling for renewed dialogue between the current political opposition and the central government in hopes of calling off the protests, though the president claims the opposition is using the protests to secure political goals. He said, quote, "I want to tell the leadership of the opposition that elections ended on August 8th last year. You can't seek the leadership of our country through bloodshed, deaths, and destruction of property. There is no way you will change Kenya through the route you have taken." Regional embassies have called for calm and further talks, stating, quote, "We recognize the daily hardship faced by many Kenyans and urge all parties to table their concerns through a meaningful dialogue." As this unrest continues, colonial legacies continue to exacerbate IMF-imposed impoverishment programs meant to keep periphery countries' resources cheap, their labor exploitable, and their political system sensitive to manipulation from the outside. Unless nationalization of industry, economic planning, and a political program for resisting IMF and other forms of imperialism are instituted, the livelihood of Kenyans and others in the same boat will remain uncertain. An American soldier named Travis T. King has made an unauthorized crossing into North Korea from the inter-Korean border, creating a crisis in U.S.-North Korea relations. Private King crossed during a tour of the Joint Security Area. The U.S. military believes he's in North Korean custody and are investigating the situation. The incident occurred amid increased tension on the Korean peninsula, with the arrival of a U.S. ballistic missile submarine and North Korea's test launch of 2 ballistic missiles into the sea. Private King had legal troubles in South Korea and likely defected while being transported to the airport. Tension in BRICS as South Africa, the host of this year's BRICS summit, says Russian President Vladimir Putin will not attend. The South African presidency highlighted that the decision was a mutual agreement. As a member of the International Criminal Court, the African nation is obligated to arrest the Russian leader if he shows up. Whether that would actually occur is another matter, as the International Criminal Court has failed to arrest any US leader for their war crimes. In Spain, voters will participate in general elections to decide whether to keep Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez's minority socialist government in power or give the mandate to the main right-wing party, Partido Popular. The PP is currently favored to win, but it will likely need the support of the far-right Vox party to secure a majority. These elections reflect the rise of far-right nationalist movements across Europe and the challenge faced by left-leaning parties. Sánchez called early elections after the socialist defeat in regional and local polls. The elections will determine the composition of the Spanish parliament and the next government. Despite the European Union granting Tunisia $280 million in aid to support its economy and improve border management, the mass expulsion of black refugees and migrants to Tunisia's borders with Libya and Algeria continues. Videos released by NGOs and Libyan border agencies show Tunisian security forces violently expelling black men, women, and children to the border with Libya, where they are left without food or water. The unrest in Tunisia began after a speech by the president warned of demographic change, and racial tensions escalated, leading to violence in the country. Libyan security agencies have been rescuing and providing assistance to these abandoned people. However, within Libya, refugees and migrants still face abuse. The EU's deal with Tunisia has been criticized by aid agencies and some members of the European Parliament, who argue that the funds are being given to an autocratic regime without ensuring respect for migrants' rights. Amnesty International has accused the EU of complicity in the attacks against black refugees and migrants in Tunisia. The aid package is now awaiting approval from EU member states, who may seek concessions before finalizing the deal. And to end with some positive news, Deforestation in Colombia fell 29.1% in 2022 versus the previous year, spurred by sharp decreases in the country's Amazon region, according to a government statement on Wednesday. This marks the lowest level since 2013. The government of left-wing President Gustavo Petro says it is prioritizing protecting Colombia's environment, and has called on rich nations to cancel foreign debt in exchange for conserving areas like the Amazon, the destruction of which risks worsening global climate change. That's all for today. We'll be back day after tomorrow with more news. If you missed them, be sure to check out our previous episodes by following the links on your screen. As always, you can support the show and get the news in text form a few hours early by becoming a patron at patreon.com/firstthought.